Chapter 8. Our group looked forward to this training like no other before. We came early. The gym was open. Some guys, having already changed, began to warm up. Sensei stood aside and talked with enthusiasm to a gangly old man who was so skinny that his kimono was hanging on him like on a coat hanger. Close by, standing with a group of men, was Dumpling. By the expression on his face, one could see that he didn't hear the funny jokes his group were telling. It was as if his ears had turned into a radar and were picking up the slightest sound coming from Sensei and the old man. Gosh, I thought with indignation, he is here again. Following us, a couple of guys from our dojo walked in loudly, in an elated mood. They were accompanied by an untidy, yet proud-looking man, about 40 years old, with a week's worth of old bristle on his face. The guys greeted Sensei and announced with evident pleasure, "We just met a very interesting man, a psychic. His name is Vitaly Yakovlevich." With these words, the disheveled man made a ceremonious bow with his head and again put on a self-satisfied air. He possesses extraordinary abilities, and he has kindly agreed to demonstrate them to our group. Sensei made a polite bow in reply and said, "It would be very interesting to see." "And very educational," added Vitaly Yakovlevich meaningfully, raising up his forefinger. Our huge, curious crowd began to gather around him. Meanwhile, the psychic, with an air of great expertise, reached into the torn pocket of his jacket and pulled out a dozen common kitchen spoons wrapped in a dirty rag. "What do you think?" Kostya quietly whispered to Andrei. "Where did this Neanderthal man get these treasures of human civilization?" "I think he has stolen them from somewhere, probably," replied Andrei. "I wonder, does he even know how to use them?" Kostya remarked, smiling. Meanwhile, Vitaly Yakovlevich, in an emphatic manner, undressed down to his waist, and having uncovered his wrinkled fat stomach, began to diligently stick the backsides of spoons to his chest. Our guys burst out laughing, and Kostya added, "Wow, that's why they say that equipment in the hands of a savage is just a pile of metal." A slight wave of amazement ran through the crowd. The spoons became really stuck, and the psychic was now grandly walking with a puffed-out chest as if it was covered with medals of honor. One of the guys asked, "How are you doing this? How can you explain it?" It seemed like this was the question Vitaly Yakovlevich was waiting for. With obvious pleasure, he started to talk instructively about bioenergy and informational fields, biological human magnetism, its phenomenal manifestation only through chosen people, and its all-powerful influence. His speech finally reached its culmination. Walking in front of the astonished crowd with his naked torso covered with the hanging spoons and convincingly gesticulating, the psychic was passionately declaiming, "This powerful, pulsating emanation born from the power of the universal cosmic mind embodies the last step to the perfection of spirit. It is able to surround human consciousness with the power of its aura, and not only to separate itself from the human body, but also to exist out of the body together with the soul. I would say, to exist in the beyond quite consciously. Having accumulated the energy of this cosmic emanation, I have discovered fantastic superpowers in myself. I have an invaluable gift of magnetism, clairvoyance, and healing. I have the power to miraculously heal all diseases. I cure through an all-penetrating, omnipresent double flow of emanation, which appears to be an initial cause of all energy and informational fields of the great universe. With my positive energy, I restore power, body, human aura, and also break the hex spell and remove the evil eye." I noticed that even though I didn't quite understand this peculiar lecture, my thoughts started to search in it for ways of my possible cure. Maybe he will be able to heal me? Although, of course, it's very hard to believe, but maybe. Encouraged by the elusive hope, I started to listen much more diligently to the convincing speech of the psychic, already not paying any attention to his appearance. My might, as I was perfecting it, became immense. Here, as you can see, this is one of its manifestations, and he pointed to the stuck spoons. It looked quite strange. Making circles around the listening crowd, he stuck his stomach out further and further and slightly leaned back like a penguin. I looked at Sensei. He was standing with his arms crossed on his chest and his head slightly lowered, probably already tired of listening. He was smiling ironically. I achieved this perfection due to mysterious knowledge that is not known to anyone on Earth except the chosen ones. On the basis of that secret information, I created my own system of spiritual development. But it's not available to every mortal, even one who through the hardest work and through the atonement of sins and privations reaches the 10th level of my system of perfection, won't be able to realize the great mystery of this teaching, because it reveals itself only to the chosen ones among the chosen ones. Only people like me who are able to unite the perishable body with the Great Spirit, the Spirit of universal mind, possess the almightiness of God. It seemed like those words were the last strain on Sensei's nerves. Judging by his light wave of movements, it seemed to me that he would lose his temper and punch this man with so much force that even the so-called power of this visitor would not be able to save him. But despite my forecast, Sensei said, clearly enunciating every word, "Mister, isn't it too much responsibility to take on yourself? So far, you haven't demonstrated to us anything that would have proved your words." "What do you mean I haven't demonstrated?" Vitaly Yakovlevich exploded angrily. "Don't you see this?" "All this is rubbish," continued Sensei. "Anybody can do it, and there is nothing extraordinary or special in it. You simply need to wash yourself more often." The whole crowd rolled with laughter. Kostya, hitting himself on the forehead, said in excitement, "Of course. I remember I've read about this trick. He just has a sticky and wet body. That's why the spoons got stuck." The self-proclaimed Pantocrator of the universe and the whole earth became even more furious and shouted across the gym towards Sensei. "You are too young to make judgments about such great knowledge. What else can you do except flap your legs?" Sensei gazed at him intently. Then he came up and easily took off one of the spoons that were slipping away. Everybody around froze. The teacher stretched out his hand, holding the thin end of the spoon, and started doing a series of breathing exercises, working on deep breathing. In a minute, his face relaxed and his emotions disappeared. His eyes changed, and it seemed to me that they became fathomless. He froze for a few seconds, fixing his eyes on the spoon. His figure looked like a great sculpture. And at that moment, the spoon started to bend fast like a soft fading flower stem, as if it weren't made of tough metal, but of some plastic material. I couldn't believe my eyes. Impossible, but it actually happened. Sensei regained his normal appearance a few seconds later, and calmly said to the shocked Vitaly Yakovlevich, as he returned the bent spoon, "When you can at least demonstrate this simple trick to us, then we will listen to you with great pleasure." And quickly turning to the crowd, Sensei added, "I would like to inform those that haven't changed yet that the training will start in 2 minutes. The ones who don't make it in time will have to do the push-up penalty. That's what we called 20 push-ups for being late." Having heard these words, we rushed to the changing rooms, outrunning each other, and consequently missed the most interesting scene of the newly born minor deity Bum falling from grace. We heard the voice of Sensei behind us. "Senior Senpai, why are there strangers in the gym?" During the whole warm-up, I pondered, how could I have even entertained the thought that this bum would have somehow been able to help me? Well, on the other hand, in my desperate situation, all I can do is believe in miracles and hope for the best. You grasp at any straw just to survive. That's why these silly thoughts arise, because of an internal, almost panicky level of fear. No, I should control myself. I will find a loophole, a saving grace. I'll try to survive. I shouldn't lose hope, and I will fight to the very end. The most amazing thing was that my firm belief was based on some deep subconscious feeling of something I was looking for so hard. But I was unable to say what exactly. I only had vague guesses. Meanwhile, the warm-up ended, and we started practicing the basics under Senior Senpai's supervision. Sensei was sitting on a bench and discussing something with the gangly old man. I wish I could hear what they are talking about, my persona thought to myself, And evidently, these curious thoughts were not in my head only. Throughout the training, despite the fact that he was a man with gray hair, Dumpling was always trying, as if by accident, to take a place closer to the teacher. And with each try, he created an indescribable feeling of envy and jealousy within me. And judging by the accusing gazes of our guys, I wasn't the only one who felt it. During the loud commands of the monotonous basic exercises, I again got deep into my thoughts. How did Sensei manage to bend that spoon? And why did he call that phenomenon simply a trick? If that was a trick, then, in my understanding, it should have been thoroughly prepared in advance. But he just took the spoon and bent it with his gaze alone. I could say that I believed and disbelieved it at the same time. I believed it because I had read about people who possessed such abilities. I remembered descriptions of the so-called magnet people. Any object, regardless of what material it is made of, wood, metal, or plastic, would stick to them. I remember that I was amazed most of all by the weight those people could hold up. More than 10 kilos. Paradoxically, but I couldn't believe what I had seen with my own eyes. Or perhaps the disbelief was caused by my reluctance to realize that the fact itself was real. Everything seemed so mysterious. I could have understood if our crowd had been hypnotized if I was told beforehand what was about to happen. But Sensei just stood in silence and did it. How? Nevertheless, the fact that it was possible was very important to me. It was some kind of a firm platform formed by Sensei's knowledge that was not yet known to me, and my subconscious was intensely grasping at it in every way possible, resisting those antagonistic thoughts. I don't know why, but I started to trust that interesting man. At least he obviously knew where there is truth and where there is fiction. After basic exercises, the moment our group had been waiting for finally came. We called this part of the training the freestyle program. We were split up into pairs and able to exercise old techniques or some more unusual techniques from the previous training sessions. Andre picked up his nunchaku and, followed by our curious glances, approached the teacher. Is it possible to do something against nunchaku? Do you know how to use them? Sensei asked in turn with a smile. Of course, bragged Andre, self-satisfied. I haven't put them down for 4 years. One could say, I eat and sleep with them. Andre demonstrated a couple of, in our opinion, complex movements. Not bad, Sensei said. So, is it possible to do something against nunchaku? Andre repeated his question, obviously provoking the teacher. Of course. For every VJ there is a Raja. What? Andre asked again, not understanding the last phrase. I mean, for every power there is a counterpower. Nunchaku is not an exception. Can you show that? I can, but then it will be unfair, you with nunchaku against me. Take somebody else with you. We looked at each other with astonishment. Nevertheless, Andre went to look for a partner, and our group went to look for a second weapon. To our regret, there were no more nunchaku. Instead, we found a lot of 2-meter-long poles in the sports equipment room. But although we found weapons fairly easily, finding a partner for Andre was more difficult. Senior guys flatly refused the proposal to take part in this fight and laughed. No thanks, man. You'd better do it alone. Finally, Andre managed to convince a man among the newcomers. Meanwhile, Sensei was peacefully chattering with that skinny old man in the white kimono. Here I found one, Andre happily announced to the teacher. You have found one, great. Let Senior Senpai second us at his clap start to attack with full contact. Is that clear? That was all Andre was waiting for. He nodded with obvious pleasure. Sensei walked out into the middle. Andre stood facing Sensei, while the man with the pole chose a position from the rear right of Sensei. It was a thrilling moment. All participants were battle-ready except Sensei. He was standing relaxed, thinking about something and playing with the tips of his black belt, embroidered with gold hieroglyphs. At the senior senpai's clap, Andre zealously rushed into a frontal attack, spinning his nunchaku with the speed of the blades of a working propeller. Meanwhile, the other man jumped up quickly and started striking with the pole, What happened next happened in an instant. Sensei hadn't changed his position from the moment the attack began, but rather kept standing in a deeply thoughtful pose. As soon as his opponents reached a critical distance of his body, without changing his stance, he quickly threw his hand forward. If "threw" was the right word, because in reality, his hand shot out like an attacking snake. The nunchaku folded and flew towards the second fighter. The teacher redirected the sticks with a twist of his wrist, slightly changing the trajectory of the flight. The nunchaku made half a turn in the air, aligned, and like the butt end of a stick, hit the middle of the forehead of the man attacking from behind. The second nunchaku stick, continuing its flight, hit the pole, and the pole, correspondingly changing its trajectory, hit Andre right in the head. As a result, the two fail fighters clumsily fell to the floor without even realizing what had happened. Meanwhile, Sensei continued to stand thoughtfully, as if all the turmoil had nothing to do with him. And then, having perked up, he asked his opponents caringly, "How are you guys? Did you get hurt badly?" "No," Andre answered, confused, intensely massaging a puffed-out bump on his forehead. "It's all right." The other man also nodded. "I'm sorry I miscalculated a bit," apologized Sensei. Approaching his previous interlocutor, he said as if nothing had happened, "You know, I have a great idea. What if—" Meanwhile, observing the fight, the crowd buzzed in discussion with noises of laughter and amazement about such a quick fight. And one of the senior guys whom Andre had asked to help said with laughter, "Yeah, sure, Sensei miscalculated, Don't worry guys, it's all right. We've been through the same miscalculations many times before, and all due to our own stupidity." When Andre realized what had happened, he simply tormented Kostya and Slava with the same question. "How can that be? One movement? Not even a strike?" Kostya perplexedly answered, "How would we know? Sensei is over there. Ask him." But the teacher was always busy until the end of the training, first demonstrating new techniques, then showing complicated strikes to the senior guys, then answering endless questions, and at the end of the training talking to the old man. However, Andre had made up his mind. He was going to clear things up right there and then, no matter what. We got that chance only when the supplementary training was over. We quickly changed and waited at the exit, like guards, as we decided to get what we wanted. But it turned out that Igor Mikhailovich and his guys were walking towards the same tram stop. On the way, we started our interrogations. "How did you manage to defeat two armed opponents with only one movement?" Andre asked his burning question. "Well, weapons have nothing to do with it. This is a technique that uses the opponent's force. By the way, it is used in many styles. For example, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Wing Chun, and others. You need only to catch a moment and use it right away." "In general, I understand, but in this case, what style did you use?" "Nothing special," cunningly answered Sensei, shrugging his shoulders. "A little bit of everything." "But still," queried Andre. "Well, in this case, all you have to know is the physical law of inertia, the distribution of the gravity center in biomechanics, and a little bit of the snake style." "Wow," whistled Andre. "What did you think it was? All great things are ridiculously simple, but it takes a lot of hard work to master them." While Andre was thinking over that phrase, Slava quickly asked, "Is it possible to explain that effect with the spoon?" "Of course it is possible," Sensei said with a smile. "There is nothing hidden on Earth that will not be revealed at some point." "So what was that?" Just trifles. There is nothing special, just an ordinary Qigong, or rather one of its modifications." "And what is Qigong?" Now it was my turn to ask a question. "I've read somewhere that it is just a breathing technique," Kostya added. "Yes, many people think so," replied Igor Mikhailovich. "But in reality, Qigong is a meditative breathing system that allows a person to master his hidden psychophysical capabilities, though in fact, it is one of the simplest types of spiritual practices." That phrase roused the interest of our group, and something trembled inside of me after these words. But as soon as I opened my mouth to ask about how we could learn it, Kostya broke in with his favorite manner of verbiage. Yes, if but some sign is indicated, a man can sooner feel his way. Oh, you like Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, do you? Replied Igor Mikhailovich. Then, if you've read carefully, he also said the following. The sage has said, the world of spirits is not shut away, thy sense is closed, thy heart is dead. Up, student, bathe without dismay, thy earthly breast in morning red. At that moment, you should have seen the surprise on Kostya's face. He was so impressed by these words that he wasn't able to immediately find the right answer. That was the first person in his life, except his parents, of course, who had spoken to him at his high intellectual level. It serves him right, I gloated in my thoughts. He used to think he was the only man with a good education in this world. I've read quite a lot of books. Our philosopher started to defend himself, more trying to uphold his pride rather than carrying on the topic of the discussion. And it was written there that the world of spirits is only a fairy tale for kids. Who knows, Sensei said indifferently, continuing to quote Goethe. Parchment. Is that the sacred fountain whence alone there springs a draught that thirst forever quells? Refreshment. It you never will have won, if from that soul of yours it never wells. It's easy to say, from soul of yours it never wells, puffed Kostya. And after a moment of silence, he added, as Molière said, not all things that are talked of turn to facts. The road is long, sometimes, from plans to acts. What do I hear? Sensei joked. A moral code that's too extreme inspires unreason. Wisdom lies in moderation. It sounds familiar. That is from Poquelin, his expression from The Misanthrope. Who's that? Well, Jean-Baptiste Molière. Poquelin is his real surname. Even in the dim light of the street lamps, we could see Kostya turning red in the face. But Eastern wisdom says that a really wise man foresees the end before starting any doing. Absolutely right. In other words, it means that a human is a thinking being, and his fundamental force lies in his thoughts. Even in the modern world, to put it in scientific terms, you may find, for example, the confirmation of it in the saying of Tsiolkovsky. An action is preceded by a thought. A precise calculation is preceded by a fantasy. As you see in the human factor, nothing has changed throughout the ages. Why? Because, as Valentin Sidorov correctly noted, the nature of your thought is your own nature. Perceive your thought, and you will know yourself, and you will be the ruler of yourself. It is all about the power of mind. Yes, uttered Kostya, concluding, a head without mind is like a lantern without a candle. Wonderful words by Leo Tolstoy, agreed Igor Mikhailovich to the complete surprise of the philosopher. If you remember, he also has this beautiful saying, thought is the beginning of all, and you can rule your thoughts. That is why the most important thing in self-perfection is to work with your thoughts. Kostya nodded uncertainly. However, this fact proved to hurt his pride even more. So, for the next 20 minutes, we witnessed a grand battle with aphorisms, quotes, sayings of native and foreign writers, poets, philosophers, scientists, and I didn't even know most of their names. Meanwhile, my persona was trying hard to cut into this dialogue with my vitally important question which I impatiently wanted to ask. But Sensei's polemics with our philosopher flew uninterrupted, gradually reaching its peak. I was angry with Kostya for taking up such priceless time with Sensei, just to satisfy his own ego of an erudite know-all, but he was so consumed by the discussion that it seemed nothing else in the world existed for him. At the very end, as we approached the tram stop, after likely having recalled everyone he could, he recited his favorite expression. Well, as Villon said, all things except myself I know. So, take a look at yourself and ponder who you are, and where will you end up. And who is that? Kostya almost screamed, completely losing his temper. Oh, drawled Sensei with pleasure. That was Omar Khayyam, a famous Persian poet and philosopher and a great scientist who was considerably ahead of his time. His full name is Ghiyath al-Din Abul Fath Omar ibn Ibrahim al-Nisaburi Khayyami. He lived in the 11th century. His wisdom was highly esteemed even by the Seljuk rulers of Iran, though he was from Khorasan, a small village near Nishapur. He had very interesting philosophical thoughts. According to his views, the soul is eternal. It came from the not being into the human body and will return to the not being after death. For the soul, this world is a strange land. I wonder, said Tatiana, joining the conversation, where is the soul located inside of the human body? What did this philosopher think? Is it in the heart or not? No, he thought that the heart was born on earth and is only a part of mortal human flesh, although it's the best and the most spiritual part. It is through the heart that the soul communicates, but the heart, in his opinion, knows only this world, being. He has the following interesting lines when the heart asks the soul about the mysteries of the not being. Sensei reflected on it for a bit and said, "My heart requested, teach me. The sciences are sacramental, but what do they conceal? I started with the alphabet, Aleph, and then heard. That's enough. Like understands like. Just hint with a letter." And what is Aleph? Aleph is the first letter in his native language. It's also the number 1. As he believes, it is a symbol of the one existing, a symbol of the universal unity. And after looking at Kostya, Sensei ironically added, "What else can one say here?" Kostya was completely disconcerted, indeed not knowing what more to say. I hastened to use that opportunity and blurted out in a single breath, "How can we learn this system of techniques to master the hidden psychophysical abilities?" It's very easy. There is no secret at all. The most important thing is, as they say, to have a great desire, and the opportunities will come soon enough. So can we learn it from you? Of course. And when can we start? Asked Andre, apparently thinking the same way as me. Well, if you are so interested in it, you are welcome to join. I devote an hour and a half to these exercises twice a week. How much does it cost? Asked Slava. Do you think it's possible to evaluate spiritual knowledge with money? Said Sensei, surprised. You guys really are obsessed with this funny paper. We train just for ourselves, for our own spiritual development. If you want to train, do train. Our group fixed a date and a time for the next meeting. Zhenya will show you the way, added the teacher. Zhenya turned out to be a tall, light-haired, athletically built guy, one of those speedy guys who accompanied Sensei. We will certainly come, Andre answered for all of us. On that note, we said our goodbyes. I was beside myself with joy. Finally, my persona got close to what I had been looking for so long. It seemed I needed to take just one step, and maybe I would be able to cross over this abyss and climb out to the solid surface of being. I felt it intuitively, with a sort of sixth sense, although my mind didn't see any real chance of survival. Despite this, as they say, my soul was singing. All the way home, the guys passionately discussed today's training and what awaited us the day after tomorrow at the spiritual class. Enthusiasm overfilled everyone but Kostya. He was puffed out like a turkey, with gloomily knitted eyebrows. Kostya, will you come? Asked Andre, clapping him on the back. I'm not sure. Maybe we shouldn't go, mumbled the dissatisfied philosopher. We're not circus actors trying to learn tricks. We'll just waste our time there for nothing. Are you stupid, man? Andre retorted politely. Where have you seen even a circus actor who can bend spoons just by looking at them? And who teaches others to do it for free? Slava added his strong argument. That's what I'm saying. You're stupid, really. I confess I am a fool, yet you'll find I understand that you are very kind, our discontented philosopher sarcastically replied. All right, guys, don't quarrel, said Tatiana. You'd better give me some ideas on how to convince my parents to let me go to this class. How? Answered Andre. Like in the joke. A daughter returned home late and her father asks her, What do you call this? The girl replies, I don't know what it's called, but from now on it will be my favorite hobby." Everybody laughed. Having agreed upon a new meeting, we went home. Chapter 9. We waited impatiently for the day. Finally, on Thursday, our group arrived in a good mood at the destination point. Arriving at the bus stop, we noticed two men silhouetted in the dark. "Oh, there's Zhenya over there," said Andre merrily. As it turned out, Zhenya was with his friend Stas. Having greeted each other, we moved on into the unknown, or to be more exact, into impenetrable darkness. "They should have at least hung lamps here," remarked Tatiana, once again stumbling over something. "Yeah," agreed Kostya. "It's not a residential area, but a real obstacle course." "Why should they waste the government's money for electricity?" grinned Zhenya. "Besides, we already know everything around here perfectly by touch. Moreover, it's unlikely that strangers would like to come to this area, especially of their own free will." "And why would that be?" asked Slava anxiously. "This place is unusual, it's remote. Even animals avoid coming here, not to mention people. Can you hear those dogs howling?" And sure enough, somewhere close by in the village, a couple of dogs were howling. Tatiana shivered slightly, grabbing my hand. "And dogs feel danger well," he continued. "Come on, stop scaring people with fairy tales," said Andre, trying to make a joke. "They aren't fairy tales at all. Try living here for a while and you'll find out what sort of devilry goes on. If you survive, of course." After that statement, our good mood quickly disappeared. For some time, we walked silently, looking around. But no matter how much we tried to peer into the pitch darkness, nothing could be seen. Only dim silhouettes of old houses. And what was strange was that there was no light there. Only dogs with mournful howls showed signs of life in this god-forsaken place. "Where are we going?" panicked Kostya. "What do you mean, where?" mimicked Zhenya. "Right where you've asked for. To the Black Glade." "We're?" Horrified, we exclaimed almost at the same time. "Gosh, don't yell like that," said Zhenya, rubbing his ear, deafened by our wild outcry. "I told you, we are going to the Black Glade." And stumbling over another pothole, he cursed, "Holy crap! The evil forces are trying to set traps everywhere. Watch out, or they will drag one of the stragglers away." Tatiana, who was holding my hand for safety, grabbed Kostya's with her other hand. I felt her starting to tremble all over. Slava, who had been lagging behind until now, quickly moved ahead of us. Andre was walking silently and looking around. "Where have you seen evil forces in a black glade?" Kostya uttered with fear. "Where would they come from? Absolute nonsense." "Where?" "From over there." Zhenya confidently waved his hand somewhere to the side. "Why have we come here?" mumbled Tatiana with fear and trembling. "We could have been at home without a care in the world." "But you wanted to learn black magic, and now you're asking why have we come?" Zhenya answered, shrugging his shoulders. "To learn what?" we all asked again in amazement. "I can't believe it," Zhenya exclaimed with a surprised face. "Didn't you know that Sensei is the most powerful wizard, the right hand of Lucifer?" Now it was our turn to stare wide-eyed. "Who? What? And who is Lucifer?" An avalanche of questions rushed at Zhenya. "All right," our guide grandly stopped the torrent of our questions. "I will explain everything to you now. Lucifer means an angel of light, the right hand of God. For the majority of people, he is known under different names. For example, Satan or devil, whatever you prefer. He is the ruler of the earth. Secondly, I emphasize once again that Sensei is his right hand, and his power doesn't have boundaries. For him, bending spoons is nothing. He is able to do such things that you can't imagine even in your most dreadful dream. And thirdly, you are very lucky. You can gain supernatural abilities at almost no cost. Just for a soul you don't know anything about and you don't even feel. But why am I telling you all this? You will see for yourselves now." "Well, well, well, see what a fine mess we've got ourselves in," Tatiana said, really scared. That's it, cried Kostya in a low voice. What did I tell you? We shouldn't have come, but you didn't listen. I told you there was something fishy going on here, but I was also stupid, a dummy. I tagged along with you. What should we do now? Kostya's panicky terror spread to Slava, and he whispered to us, I guess it's time to get away from here. Where? Hissed Kostya. Do you remember how many times we turned going in different directions? I don't care, declared Andrei. So what if Sensei is a wizard? That's his personal problem. What's important is that he knows much more than I do. And I won't miss an opportunity to learn that. Me neither, responded my persona as I thought to myself, I shouldn't care at all because this is my chance to survive. And if not, then I have nothing to lose anyway. But maybe it will help. We came across a curved path along the side of a long, lonely fence. At that moment, the moonlight shone through the clouds. Suddenly, right before us, a big black cat with yellow-green eyes, burning like two flashlights, jumped on the fence. Caught by surprise, Tatiana and I screamed and hid behind the guys' backs. However, our defenders also froze, rooted to the ground. Only our guides continued calmly on their way. Zhenya, having seen our stupor, mysteriously whispered, It's just the beginning. Without paying any attention to us, the cat kept walking along the desolate fence as if it were guiding us. Evil, go away. Slava spat 3 times over his left shoulder. You should have made the sign of the cross, Andrei said sarcastically. I agree, Tatiana said, licking her dry lips. They say if a black cat crosses the road, you should hold on to one of your buttons. Then the evil forces won't even notice you. Just to be on the safe side, I found a button with my shaky hands. Our group hurried to catch up with the rest, all the while watching the dark shadow of the cat. The path took us to a small glade. The full moon was ominously creeping out from the clouds. Then, what we saw completely shocked us. In the middle of the glade, with his back to us, stood a man in a black garment with a hood thrown over his head. His figure phosphoresced with the faintly cold moonlight. Light smoke ascended over him. All around there was a weighty, eerie silence. As we watched, we all lost our ability to speak. Suddenly, the big black cat jumped right to our feet, making us freeze on the spot. But not before instinctively grabbing our saving buttons. Scampering off cheekily, that beast made its way towards the dark figure and started to rub against his feet, to our unspeakable horror. Gazing upon such a sinister scene, everything in my mouth dried up, and a shiver ran along my entire body. In spite of my desire to run away, my persona stood still, unable to move. I looked at the guys. Tatiana almost climbed up onto Kostya and clutched him with a death grip. Kostya himself looked like a plaster monument. Slava stood with an open mouth and rounded eyes. Even Andrei, despite his earlier optimism, had his teeth chattering nervously. His face was covered with sweat. Zhenya, looking back at us, meekly approached the dark figure. Raising his hands, he solemnly pronounced, "O great magician, wizard and sorcerer, ruler over all the nations, whose power and might over all land, water, air, and fire stretches over the entire universe. Your loyal disciples have fulfilled their holy duty. Take into your bosom these lost souls in order to restore your true and fair authority and power on earth." Zhenya made a low bow. During his speech, Sensei turned to him in surprise. "What?" he asked. "What authority? What power? What are you babbling about?" Zhenya and Stas both rolled with laughter. "What's the matter? What are you laughing about?" asked Sensei, while smoking a cigarette. "And where are the other guys? Did you meet them?" Drowning in laughter, Zhenya waved towards us. "They are still in a stupor over there and won't come over." "What kind of stupor?" asked Sensei, trying to understand and looking into the dark. "What kind of mischief have you been up to?" But Zhenya couldn't stop laughing, hopelessly waving his hand. "What a clown!" "Sensei, don't you know Zhenya?" replied Stas, laughing heartily. Watching the hilarity, Andrei was first to understand what was going on. Shamefully pulling his hand away from the button, he sighed with relief. "Well, guys," said Andre, walking out from the darkness towards them. "You're something. The joke was good, but who's gonna wash my pants now?" This comment provoked an even bigger storm of laughter. Sensei said with a smile, "What did this clown make up this time?" Andre started to tell in detail how this guide led us through the village, which was described as the Bald Mountain. We also joined him, enriching the story with our impressions. At the very end, our entire group, together with Sensei, roared with uninterrupted laughter, recalling our feelings. "I just arrived a bit earlier today," explained Sensei, laughing through tears. "The light in our village was cut off. The cable was probably damaged somewhere." "What a story," Tatiana uttered in a clear voice, as if what Zhenya did wasn't bad enough. But there was also this cat. Meanwhile, the small furball of our big fear was sitting peacefully, frightened by our human laughter. "It's Samurai," Stas waved his hand and explained. "Sensei's cat. He always follows him." "Stas, you should have told us what was going on," Andre said with a smile. "How?" He shrugged his shoulders. "You were afraid of every shadow. And if I were to start making faces on top of it, we would have had to search for you all over the village." The guys laughed, imagining the scene. "So what?" Zhenya justified. "It was just an ordinary joke. Like Ostap Bender said, the most important thing is to bring confusion into the enemy's camp, because people are afraid of the unknown most of all." "That's right," said Sensei. "Fear begotten by imagination sees danger even where there is no danger at all. There is an ancient Eastern parable about fear. A wise man met the plague on his way and asked, 'Where are you going?' It answered, 'To a big city. I have to kill 5,000 people there.' In a few days, the same wise man again met the plague. 'You said that you'd kill 5,000 people, but you've killed all 50,000, he accused. "No," objected the plague. "I only killed 5,000. The others died from fear." After discussing all the funny details of the journey and having dispelled the myth of our unjustified fears by humor and laughter, we switched to more serious topics. Our group was joined by 3 other guys, Ruslan, Yura, and Victor, senior senpai. A little later came Nikolai Andreevich, who turned out to be a psychotherapist. Meanwhile, we were talking about Qigong. "What does the word Qigong mean?" Slava asked Sensei. Well, translating this word literally from Chinese, Qigong refers to work with the energy of the air, because Qi means wind, gas, breath, and the syllable gong means work, action, or deed. "So this system was also invented by the Chinese?" said Andre with a sigh. "Not really," answered the teacher. "It is the Indian system of self-regulation, which migrated to China at the beginning of the new era. I've read that different types of Qigong exist." As always, Kostya put in his remark. "I think there are 2 different schools." "There are a lot more of them," said Igor Mikhailovich. "In the modern world, there are plenty of different schools of Qigong. For example, Confucian, Buddhist, medical, military." "Medical?" I perked up. "What does it heal?" "Many diseases." "So we need only to breathe the right way?" Andre interrupted my next question. "Not only, you also need to think in the right way. There is a saying that a thought guides Qi and Qi guides the blood. Blood is like the ambulance of the body. It includes all the necessary medical supplies. In the very ancient medical treatise Huangdi Neijing, it is said that when a thought rests in stillness and is free, it means that you can master Qi. The one who masters healthy thoughts has good health. In a nutshell, a sound mind is in a sound body," Kostya concluded. "Not really. I would say, with healthy thoughts there is a sound spirit, and with a sound spirit there is a healthy body. Could you please tell me, you always emphasize the importance of thinking the right way, both during physical trainings and now," remarked Andre. But for some reason, I used to think that all we needed was just to act the right way, because thoughts can be different during the choice of action, both good and bad. That's where you waste priceless time on struggle with your own self. You shouldn't have to choose between a good and a bad thought, because you should have no negative thoughts in your mind at all. The goal of the highest art, the art of lotus, is to learn the proper way of thinking. In other words, to kill the dragon inside yourself, or to defeat the dragon. Have you heard of such an expression? Yes, that is the purpose. The greatest victory is the victory over yourself. What does that mean? It means to defeat your own negative thoughts, to learn to control them, and to learn to control your emotions. I repeat once again, there should be nothing negative in your mind, only a positive factor. Then you won't need to spend time fighting with yourself, and your actions will always be positive. Peace, first of all, should be inside of you. Peace and harmony. So it means that a person's thought is reflected in each of his actions? Asked Andre, thinking about something known only to him. It is not only reflected, it guides all action, because the thought is material. Material? It was Nikolai Andreevich's turn to be surprised. Of course, it's a much subtler substance not studied enough yet. But it does exist, it is real. Its movements have been recorded. There have been many effective experiments on thought phenomena. There were experiments with our psychics. For example, Nainil Kulagina, Julia Vorobyeva, and many others. I won't even mention the vast global practical studies. This research is conducted all over the world, although it is known by different names. For example, in England it is known as psychical research. In France it is metapsychics. In Eastern European countries, psychotronics. In the US, parapsychology. In China, investigations into extraordinary functions of the human body, and so on. And if you look deeply into the history of mankind, you will find much evidence that suggests it has been known from the earliest of times. In all mythical, magical, and religious views and teachings, a firm belief exists that it is possible to influence anyone and anything through thoughts, regardless of the distance, time, and space. In other words, generally speaking, this knowledge has always existed. Nikolai Andreevich joined in the debate again. Well, you've just cited examples of our local psychics who became famous just recently. But why weren't there such people in the Soviet Union before? I've been practicing psychotherapy for many years, but while studying the psyche of different people, my colleagues and I have never come across such phenomena. It's true that recently there were people talking nonsense and considering themselves to be extrasensory, and they even tried to prove it, but in reality, it was just their sick imagination, while real psychics didn't exist in the Soviet Union. What do you mean they didn't exist? Igor Mikhailovich was surprised. They existed, and there were a lot of them. Since time immemorial, there existed many such people in Russia. But how were they treated? In ancient, unenlightened times, very seldom were they considered saints, but in the majority of cases, those who refused to obey the church were burned at the stake or impaled, depending on the whim of the king. Only since the second half of the 18th century, after the opening of the Academy of Science, did the phenomena of the psychic life of human beings start to be researched in Russia more seriously, from the medical point of view. And about 100 years later, research in that sphere was conducted by many prominent scientists. For example, by one of the founders of your own science, Vladimir Mikhailovich Bekhterev. When he was the head of St. Petersburg's Imperial Military and Medical Academy, he himself financed the creation of an entire research institute for the study of brain and psychic activities. And during the Soviet rule, almost from the start of its existence, supreme attention was paid to the study of psychic phenomena of the brain and of one of its main mysteries, thoughts. It can be proved by historical fact that those investigations were held by the order of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin under the personal control of Felix Edmundovich Dzerzhinsky in the first special department of the Joint State Political Directorate that was dealing with secrecy and protection of state secrets. This department even had a special neuroenergy laboratory. This elite special department used various healers, mediums, shamans, and hypnotists in its work. Gosh, and why did they need all those folk healers? Nikolai Andreevich was really surprised. Well, all that was for the same reason: the extraordinary abilities of those individuals. They were able to manipulate the hidden forces of a human being that significantly surpassed the abilities of any machinery. All these phenomena were very seriously examined. They even sent scientific expeditions looking for this knowledge, from the studies of the mysteries of ancient civilizations to the search for the legendary Shambhala. Shambhala? That sounds familiar. What is it? Andre asked impatiently. Shambhala? Well, it's kind of an abode located high in the mountains, but it's famous because the group of scientists living there have long surpassed mankind in their spiritual, scientific, and technical knowledge. Now I recall, said Nikolai Andreevich. Legend says that Shambhala is an abode of wise men. But what has science got to do with it? Do these wise men study something in particular? Astronomy or mathematics or just philosophy? In Shambhala, they study the most ancient primordial science, Bailianjiao, or in other words, the science of White Lotus, which includes everything, and exact sciences as well. Moreover, it is the only source of all the sciences studied by mankind. Nikolai Andreevich looked at Sensei distrustfully. What do you mean, the most ancient and the only? Majority of exact sciences appeared quite recently. Well, maybe 200 or 300 years ago. You are mistaken. All this knowledge was given to people a long time ago for the development of their civilization, in ancient times as well. Long before written history, there were other human civilizations that achieved a level of development much higher than that of the present. Some of them were destroyed, some reached the absolute. However, remnants of their existence are still being found today. Read about strange archaeological findings and explorations, and you will see for yourselves. In the future, people will find even more interesting proof of what happened a long time ago on the globe. A lot is written in ancient literature about the existence of this knowledge. For example, semblance of ancient nuclear explosions, the results of which scientists now find in the most ancient strata, precise maps of the stellar sky, depicting planets that have not yet been discovered, the Vimana's aircraft, and so forth. It means that all this different knowledge was given to people before, and it originates from one source, the science of Shambhala. And just how far ahead is this science compared to modern knowledge? Nikolai Andreevich asked arrogantly, crossing his hands over his chest. Way ahead, Sensei replied simply. Much farther than you can imagine. But to give you at least the slightest idea, I will give this example. During those times when people still piously believed that the earth stood on 3 whales and the sun circled around it, the scientists of Shambhala had already conducted scientific experiments and different tests on the sun itself. Modern civilization is still very far from that, and it's not yet clear whether it will reach such a level. Why do you think people at the peak of their power searched for Shambhala so zealously? For instance, in the span of time known to you, such figures as Alexander of Macedon, Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and so on, searched for it. Because according to all the ancient legends and myths of different cultures, all the knowledge of the universe and the cultural heritage of extinct civilizations is concealed in Shambhala. I wonder why only tyrants searched for it. Not tyrants, but people striving for absolute power over the world. All people in power, who possess true information, have known and still know about the existence of this abode, about the existence of the powerful knowledge concealed in it. They are well aware that the real power over the world is concentrated in Shambhala. That's why many people searched and are still searching for it. However, Shambhala itself never gave anyone the opportunity to conquer the whole world. In a way, it balanced certain forces. And if a person, standing at the peak of his power, zealously tried to realize his dream of domination over the world, he simply ended his existence. Many people in power made connections with representatives of Shambhala, fulfilling their requests. Everybody tried to help, because it's simply impossible to forego the temptation to know more than mankind knows. Aside from public leaders, many ordinary people were also in search of knowledge of Shambhala. Does that mean that nobody has ever found it? Kostya asked. Not exactly. The paradox is that Shambhala has never hidden its existence. It doesn't interfere actively in people's lives unless it concerns something globally important for all of mankind, and in particular for Shambhala. But if it's necessary, its scientific community decides who it is appropriate to contact. Okay, let's assume this to be true, but if this abode of wise men doesn't hide its existence, why couldn't it be found by people who were at the peak of power? After all, they had everything at their disposal: equipment, finance, and human resources. Nikolai Andreevich was puzzled. Yes, you've listed everything but their hard hearts and greedy thoughts. The unalterable rule for contacting Shambhala is the high morality and purity of a person's intentions. Only someone who possesses these qualities in the first place can obtain access to knowledge of interest to him. You see, we come back again to our starting point. Why can't a human develop these phenomenal abilities consciously when it is quite possible? Because there is too much egocentrism, vanity, greed, anger, envy in him. In other words, too many qualities inherent to beastly animalistic nature. And if he comes into contact with these inexplicable psychic phenomena, his animal nature turns on logic because it fears losing its empire of power, created in man's mind based on parasitic thoughts. In other words, the animal nature tries to preserve its power over a human by rationalizing a phenomenon or criticizing it, when all that is needed is simple, childlike faith. In some cases, of course, people spontaneously discover their phenomenal abilities as a result, for example, of some kind of trauma, intense stress, and so forth. But if negative qualities prevail in the human mind, it's the same as if a Neanderthal finds a monkey wrench and, not knowing how to use it, applies it, from his negative point of view, to his friends. The guys smiled and Genya asked, will he hit them on their heads? Even worse, on the big toes. Then his friends will completely forget about their heads. And if at that moment good spiritual nature prevails in the human? I asked with curiosity. And if spiritual nature prevails in a person, then he will correctly perceive new information on a subconscious level, using his phenomenal abilities for good intentions. Because in this case, faith begets knowledge, and knowledge strengthens faith. And without faith, no miracles are possible in this world. It's an interesting thought, said Nikolai Andreevich, and remaining silent for a while added, I wonder, when Stalin came to power in our country, did research into these phenomena stop? On the contrary, this research became even more intensive and continued even after his death. This interest hasn't waned, even to the present day. This subject is being examined by many scientific institutes. But I've studied works of many well-known authors of different institutes who specialize in my sphere. However, I haven't come across the subject. It's not strange because this subject belongs to the sphere of hidden control over the masses. I think that you understand well enough how secret these works are. I can give you an example of the Leningrad Institute named after Vladimir Mikhailovich Bekhterev. By the way, the work of Bekhterev was continued by his granddaughter, Natalia Petrovna Bektereva. There, they closely study the human brain. And one of the main study areas of that institute is research into people's psychic phenomena. But the Leningrad Institute is one of the leading in... Nikolai Andreevich froze mid-sentence, evidently shocked by his own guess. Having recovered from his excitement, he continued, But if it has been studied for so long, if the military has shown such an interest in it, and if huge amounts of money are being spent, then there probably should have been huge scientific progress in psychic studies. Progress, grinned Sensei. What kind of a progress can there be with such motivation? Their institute still can't explain the phenomenal effects of this biomass that weighs little more than a kilo and is called the brain, just like other world scientists cannot. It has remained, despite all of their efforts, the mystery of mysteries. Space is investigated much more than the human brain. I agree. But you say that the sacred knowledge can be given only to people of high moral standards. Not all scientists are complete egoists with excessive megalomania. Take that very Bektareva, for example. Absolutely correct. And if you carefully follow the work of academic Bektareva as a human and a scientist, you'll see that after studying the human brain all her life, she came to the conclusion that she knows very little about its potential. Nevertheless, the deeper she delves into the study of the brain, the more she believes in the idea of its extraterrestrial origin, that is, of its true source of origin, based on the exceptional complexity and superfluity of the brain. I'm pretty sure that soon she will announce it publicly, just as it was announced by the great scientists of the world, not just in the sphere of psychic research, but in other natural sciences. For example, by Einstein, Tesla, Vernadsky, Tsiolkovsky, and other great scientists. This list is huge and would take a long time to go through. But all those people came to the conclusion that humans are very unique and mysterious creatures, and in no way could have originated on Earth from some kind of paramecium caudatum. We stood silent, slightly shocked by what we had heard. So it means that the power of extraordinary, phenomenal people is concealed simply in their thought? Kostya asked again. Absolutely right. Thought is a real power, a lot greater than humans can imagine. Thought is able to move planets, to create and destroy entire galaxies, which initially was proven by God himself. Nikolai Andreevich smiled and said ironically, "It's a very convincing answer. I can't even argue with it." Really? Andrei expressed our general amazement. Then why don't we feel the presence of this gigantic power in ourselves? Because you don't believe in it. Wow, the beginning was so complicated, but the end is so simple, stated Kostya. What can you do? Such is the nature of cognition, answered Sensei with a smile. Well, how can it be? Slava was struggling to understand. If I feel such a power, why wouldn't I believe in it? The whole trick is that first you've got to believe and then you will feel it. And what if I believe but won't feel it? Slava couldn't calm down. What then? If you really believe in it, you will definitely feel it, answered Sensei and added, All right, we can debate this quite long, but it's time to begin the meditation. And what is meditation? Asked Tatiana. I've read that it is training of the psyche during a trance, but I still don't understand what it actually is. In a few words, a simple meditation is the training of thought, while a deeper spiritual practice is the training of spirit. Isn't spirit and thought the same thing? Kostya broke into the conversation again. It's not. I noticed that the cat sitting close by stirred in its place, as if making itself more comfortable. Now we will practice the simplest meditation on the concentration of attention, so that you can learn how to control the Qi energy. But before that, I would like to repeat again for those who came later. In addition to the material body, a human also has an energy body. The energy body consists of an aura, chakrans, energy channels, meridians, and special reservoirs for energy accumulation. Each of them has its own name. I will tell you about them later in detail depending on the meditation. And what is a chakran? I asked. Chakran is a tiny spot on the human body through which different energies enter and exit. It works. So for you, it would be easier to understand it, like a diaphragm in a camera. Do you know what that is? We nodded in agreement. It is the same way with chakrans. They instantly open and instantly close. And does all that energy really come out in that instant? Slava was surprised. Well, it's not like emptying a bucket of water. After all, a human being is an energy and material creature, where energy and matter exist by their own laws and time. However, they are fully interconnected and interdependent. Any other questions? Everyone was silent. Then let's begin. Right now, your objective is to learn to feel the movement of air inside of yourselves, the movement of Qi. You all think that you understand and feel yourselves perfectly, but I'm pretty sure that you can't see right now, for example, the toes of your feet. Why? Because you don't have internal vision. Internal vision, just like internal feeling, can be trained with time in everyday practice. That's why we will start with the simplest and easiest meditation. We'll try to learn to control thoughts and sensations, to evoke them and to guide them. All right, now make yourselves comfortable and relax. Calm your emotions. You may close your eyes, so nothing will distract you. Dissolve all your thoughts and everyday problems in the emptiness. As soon as that phrase was spoken, I recalled a whole bunch of tiny household chores. Gosh, those impudent thoughts again, I thought. You were told to get dissolved. My persona tried again not to think about anything. Concentrate on the tip of your nose. With closed eyes, I tried to see the tip of my nose, guided more by my internal sensations. I felt my eyes strain slightly. Now breathe in deeply, slowly, and gradually. First, with the bottom of the belly, then with the belly, chest, raising shoulders. Slightly hold your breath. Slowly breathe out. We concentrate our internal vision only on the tip of the nose. You should feel and imagine that the tip of your nose is like a small light bulb or a small flame, and it flares up with your every breath out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. The flame flares up more and more. At first, I felt a slight burning and pricking in my nose. It felt as if I were filled with something material, like a jug with water. Then it seemed to me that in the darkness, approximately in the area of my nose tip, a contour of some purple little spot with its distant inner fragments appeared. At first, I couldn't focus on it clearly. Finally, when I was able to fix my vision on it, it started to light up from inside. Moreover, when I was breathing in, the light narrowed, and when I was breathing out, it widened. When I got used to breathing this way, I heard Sensei's voice. Now switch your attention to another part of meditation. Slightly raise your hands a little forward, palms down. Breathe in as usual, through the bottom of the stomach, then through the stomach and chest. Your breath out should be directed through the shoulders, hands, to the center of your palms, where the chakrans of the hands are located, and through them into the earth. Imagine that something is flowing through your hands. See energy or light or water, and then overflows into the earth. This flow rises from the bottom of the stomach up to your chest, and there, it is split up into two streamlets and overflows into the earth through your shoulders, arms, and palms. Focus all your attention on feeling that movement. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. A thought flashed across my mind. What does it mean to breathe through the hands? How can that be? I even panicked a little. Sensei, obviously feeling my confusion, came up and placed his palms over mine without touching the skin. After some time, my palms began to burn, like two stoves, spreading warmth from their center to the periphery. And what astonished me most of all was that I really felt tiny warm streamlets pouring through my shoulders. In the region of my elbows, they weakened, but I felt them very clearly overflowing through my palms. Deep in these new, unusual sensations, my persona asked myself, wow, how am I doing this? While I was thinking it over, I lost the sensation of the streamlets. I had to concentrate again. In general, it worked with variable success. After one of my next attempts, I again heard Sensei's voice. Close the palms of your hands in front of you. Firmly clench them so that the chakrans of the hands close and the movement of energy stops. Take 2 deep, fast breaths in and out. Lower your hands and open your eyes. After the meditation, when we started to share impressions, I understood that everyone experienced it differently. Tatiana, for example, didn't see the flame. Instead, she felt some kind of a slight movement through her hands. Andrei had a shiver in his legs and light dizziness. Kostya shrugged his shoulders and answered, I didn't feel anything special except a pins and needles sensation. But that is quite a normal reaction resulting from the oversaturation of the body with oxygen. That's true after the 3rd or 4th inhale, answered the teacher. But at the beginning, the brain fixes the thought. right before the movement of the Qi. And if you listen to yourself, relax and breathe in deeply, you will immediately feel an expansion or goosebumps in your head, or in other words, a certain process will start there. That is exactly what you need to understand. What is moving there, and learn to control it. "Why didn't I feel anything?" asked a disappointed Slava. "And what did you think about?" Sensei asked half in jest. It turned out that Slava didn't really know what he had been expecting. Maybe some kind of a miracle. Sensei replied, "Right. That's the reason you didn't feel anything, because you concentrated your thoughts not on the work, but on waiting for some supernatural miracle. But there won't be a miracle until you create it yourself. You shouldn't wait for anything supernatural just because you breathe correctly or concentrate on something. No. The biggest miracle is you, yourself, as a human. After all, what does all the great spiritual art come down to? It helps you become human, so that you gradually wake up and recall the knowledge that was given to you primordially. These meditations are merely a means of awakening from spiritual lethargy and recalling long-hidden and forgotten information that you knew and used once upon a time." "What do you mean new?" Slava didn't understand. "Well, for example, everyone knows how to read, write, and count if, of course, a person has no mental disorders. Right? Right. But first he had to be taught, while later he automatically reads, counts, and so forth. In other words, he already knows for sure that, for example, 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 × 2 = 4. It seems so simple and real. But at the beginning he was taught all this, although in truth he simply recalled it. These are hidden, subconscious abilities. Or, here is another easier example that has to do with the physiological level. If a man who doesn't know how to swim is thrown into the water, he will drown. But it has been proven and confirmed by birth in water that a newborn baby, when lowered into a pool, swims like any other animal. So does this mean that he already possesses these reflexes? Indeed. But later it's simply forgotten. It is the same with a human. He has a lot of knowledge that he doesn't even suspect he has. But all of this works only with a positive factor. If some mercenary interests prevail in him, for example, to learn to cheat somebody or to be able to hit someone with energy from a distance, or maybe he wants to be able to bend everyone's spoons so they throw him money, he will never achieve anything. Only when a person learns to control his thoughts, when he becomes human with a capital H, only then will he be able to achieve something. "So spiritual practices are a method of awakening a human?" Andre asked again. "Absolutely right. Spiritual practices are only a tool for repairing your mind. And the result depends on how you use that tool. In other words, it all depends on the desire and skill of the master. And in order to learn how to hold this tool in your hands, it is necessary to control your thought, to concentrate it, and to see it with your internal vision. In our case, it means to learn to control our breath, to feel that you breathe out through the chakrans of your hands. You need to learn to evoke certain sensations so that later you will be able to control the internal hidden energy." "In my opinion, this is a hallucination," remarked Kostya. "Yes, a hallucination if you regard it as a hallucination. But if you regard this energy as real power, then in reality it will be real power." "It's strange, but why?" "Because, I repeat, a thought controls action, while energy itself is an action. That is all. Everything is very simple." We remained silent for a moment, while Nikolai Andreevich asked, "From the point of view of psychology, is it nevertheless an objective factor or a subjective sensation? For example, I clearly felt the concentration on the tip of the nose, but movements through the arms I felt partially, only in those places where I was focusing my attention." Sensei started to explain something to the psychotherapist, using terms unknown to me, probably from his professional language. And as I understood from their speech, they touched on the problems of extrasensory perception, including healing and diagnostics of different diseases. The latter interested me very much. During this discussion, while the other guys were listening, Slava was carefully examining the palms of his hands. And as soon as a lengthy pause appeared in the discussion, he hurried to ask, I don't completely understand about chakrans. You said that there should be opening points, but there is nothing in here. The senior guys laughed. Of course, said Sensei. Visually, you won't see anything like that. Zhenya, standing next to Slava, couldn't help himself, and turning Slava's hands like a doctor, asked seriously, Well, patient, do you see bones and tendons there? No, replied Slava, still puzzled. Zhenya smacked his lips and mournfully said, He is hopeless. The guys laughed. You see, chakrans are certain zones on the human body that are more sensitive to warmth, the teacher patiently explained. Of course, they cannot be seen, but can certainly be registered by modern equipment. For scientists, just like for you, these zones are still a mystery. The cells are the same, the connections are the same, but their sensitivity is higher. Why? Because chakrans are located here, and a chakran belongs to the astral body, that is, to another deeper physics. A thought is a binding link between the astral and material bodies. That's why it is very important to learn to control your thoughts. It is then that you will be able to really guide Qi movement inside of your body. The senior guys joined the conversation, discussing some of their own meditation issues. At the end of our meeting, Sensei asked Zhenya and Stas to accompany us to the bus stop personally and help us to get on the bus. And no tricks of yours, Sensei warned Zhenya jokingly. Yes, sir, Zhenya saluted. No tricks, sir. Sensei hopelessly dropped his hand. When the whole crowd moved laughing towards the path, the teacher called the cat, but it grandly walked out in a different direction. Sensei tried to run it down and catch it, but to no avail. That prankster slipped into the nearest bushes. Squatting down, Sensei tried to pull him out. Using this opportunity, I approached the teacher, as if helping to catch the cat. Can you diagnose? Without letting me finish, Sensei replied, Oh, you mean that little wound in your head, my dear. Samurai, now you want to scratch me? You naughty cat, come out! How does he know? I thought to myself, simply shocked. Inspired by hope, I thought, if he knows about it, then maybe he'll help fight it. Meanwhile, Igor Mikhailovich asked, What do the doctors say? My parents say it's nothing serious, something to do with vessels. But as far as I understood by eavesdropping on the conversation between my mother and the doctor, I have a malignant growth in the brain, and it's not clear how it will behave in the near future. An impressive argument, said Sensei, shaking off his hands and looking towards the bushes as he addressed the cat. Well then, sit there as long as you wish. When you freeze, you'll come out yourself. The crowd, noticing Sensei's trouble with the cat, started to come back, offering to help catch it. Never mind him, Sensei waved his hand. He will come home on his own. To my complete disappointment, for that small amount of time that could have been used for conversation, we walked with Sensei in silence until we joined the others. I expected him to show some kind of a reaction, some sympathy, some hope for a possible cure. But in vain did I think that he was about to say something. His answer was only silence. Inside of me there was a small hope that I would hear some kind of hint or advice or moral support during general conversation. But he was simply walking and joking with everyone, followed by loud laughter of the crowd. That made me completely furious. Chapter 10. All the way home, I was terribly angry, and at home I simply couldn't sit still. It's over, it's all over. I lamented in my mind. Just when some kind of hope appeared, it all collapsed again. I'm fed up with it. I'm tired of everything. Everything in this world is so pointless. I can't stand it anymore. It's too much for me. Blast it all. This struggle for life with this stupid school, meaningless training, and the indifferent sensei. The end will be the same anyway. My imagination was already drawing a horrible, terrifying picture of my own funeral, the bitter tears of my mother, relatives, and friends. I clearly visualized the nails hammered into my coffin and its lowering into a damp pit thrown over with dirt. There was an absolute scary darkness around, emptiness and hopelessness. And that was all. what will be happening afterwards? Above me, where life runs like a full-flowing river. Another picture appeared in my mind. Everything was just like before. Nothing had changed. My parents continued going to work as usual. My friends went to training looking cheerful as usual, laughing happily at their endless jokes. While Sensei, just as before, continued his interesting training, demonstrating and telling amazed guys about their own abilities. Nothing has changed in this world. Except I was not here anymore. That was the point, the reason for my resentment and sorrow. This was solely my own personal tragedy. And in general, nobody else but myself needed or cared about my thoughts, my worries, my knowledge, and my life. I was born alone and I'm dying alone. Then what is the purpose of this meaningless existence? Why are people even born? What is life given for? That's the kind of jumble that was in my mind, philosophy of life, but for the most part, philosophy of fear of death. A horrible melancholy seized me, and it was quickly changing into depression. I quickly wilted under the pressure of my depressive thoughts in a span of some 24 hours. My health rapidly became worse, and horrible headaches appeared again. I missed school and all my extracurricular activities, including my favorite dance classes. I no longer needed anything in this world. But the time of the next training was drawing near. Despite the external squall of negative emotions, somewhere deep inside me I had a constant, unchanging feeling of confidence in my own strength and full tranquility. That's why I debated with myself whether to go or not. It was exactly this internal feeling that for some reason irritated me most of all. My friends showed up at my home and settled my doubts. Before that, I didn't even think of getting ready. Their inspiring laughter, discussion of simple problems, and exchange of impressions about how they had worked on the meditation at home distracted me from my heavy thoughts, raising my mood a bit. My friends were finally able to drag me out from my graveyard to the training, declaring that I was being an incorrigible malingerer. Andre also lectured me for a while using his eloquent examples and made a conclusion at the end. I understand missing school. That's clear, it's boring. But the training? It's a real adventure that you won't read about in any book or see in any kind of movie. It is so interesting and informative. While you sleepyheads say, "Don't want to, I'm not going." This way you'll sleep away the best years of your life and will have nothing to remember later. Yeah, my persona thought gloomily. If that later will ever come.